Welcome to the Contagious Code Podcast, where we dive deep into code, learn practical skills, celebrate the beauty of engineering, and eliminate imposter syndrome.
I'm Tejas Kumar, and I'm an AI engineer at IBM, previously at Vercel, Spotify, Zeta, and more. Today on the podcast, my guest is Misha Korolev, a developer experience engineer at Tekmetric. Mikhail is also a renowned conference speaker and somebody who is just a great person. He's quite outspoken. Even though he describes himself as an introvert, has a really fun personality. In this episode, we talk about the idea that your network is your net worth, because Mikhail, for the longest time, was unemployed. Previously, he was at Toptal, but he spent some time being unemployed and trying to navigate the job market, and learned some tricks that you can use today to get a job or to navigate the job market yourself. We also talk about how do you get into rooms where you don't typically belong. Mikhail and I actually met at an event around a conference I was speaking at. It was some type of VIP event, but he was not a speaker, but he was just there. And when he had his seat at the table, he was just such a fun person to be around that I was asking myself, wow, why aren't you here all the time? And so we explore the idea of, if you typically don't have a seat at the table, how do you, when you get one, first of all, how do you get one? And second of all, when you get one, how do you not waste it and use it well? If you're interested in exploring or navigating the job market, if you're currently looking for a job, or if you're looking to expand your network and get access to people you either don't regularly have access to or people you just want to know, this episode is definitely for you. Of course, this is separate to my day job, and the way we can actually make this sustainable is through partners and sponsors. So let's take a moment and acknowledge our main sponsor, CodeCrafters. CodeCrafters is a great way to expand your coding skills or even get some if you don't have them. How it works is you pick a programming language you want to learn, something like Git or Redis or Docker, and then you choose a tool you pick a programming language like JavaScript or Python or Go, and then you pick a tool like Git, Redis, or Docker. This is what happens when you read sponsor ads for a long time. It just becomes autopilot. Anyway, you pick a tool and a programming language, and then they have you build the tool with the programming language, and you get a great 2-for-1 by doing that. They have a generous free tier, but if you want to pay, you can use the link in the show notes. That's tej.as/codecrafters. Thanks for listening. And now here's my conversation with Mikhail Korolev.
Mikhail Korolev, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Am I supposed to say something?
You can say, that's what I said.
You just told me to shut up before. Okay.
It's fine. I said hi while you were mid-slurp, and now that's on camera forever.
Should I not slurp for the...
You can slurp if you want.
Okay, I will slurp.
Yeah, let's make people listen to your slurp. Go ahead.
Some people... Okay.
Oh, that's ASMR. That's incredible.
So good.
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy to have you on the podcast, at least for now. We'll see if that changes. Okay. Man, I'd love to talk to you. So we met, it was 2022, I think, yeah?
Yep.
Warsaw JS, incredible conference at Confront JS, actually it's called.
Yep.
I will say, not a very confrontational conference. I actually had a really good time meeting you. And the way we met, I think this is important for the listeners, because this whole episode, I want it to be about having a great career and diversifying into maybe new skill sets, and doing so mostly through networking, among other things. There's this idea that your network is your net worth. Tyler Desson says this, and Taylor, excuse me. And so you're really good at inserting yourself into places that some would believe that they don't belong. Right? I don't mean places that you don't belong. I'm not gatekeeping you. But some people feel like, hey, I want to be an engineer, but I don't belong there because I don't have a degree whatsoever. So let's start by talking there. Maybe through the path of even just us getting to know each other. Yeah. And the reason I say this is because I need to be careful how I talk about this, because there's events like conferences and things where speakers are considered VIPs. Yeah. And that, I think that doesn't mean they're just universally very important people, but for the event, they are important because,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so I often am a speaker, and I'm often considered a VIP. And I went to this VIP dinner, and you were there, but you were not a speaker. And so I'm happy you were there. But some would see this as, who is this guy, and he doesn't belong here? Why is he here? But it's because of that insertion that we're now friends. And I do, we've spent the weekend together, and you are a friend. Absolutely. I really look up to you. I think you're one of the nicest, maybe best people I know.
Oh, wow.
And I mean it, right? And I've said this to you also. And so how, man? How does one insert themselves into some VIP dinner that most people would be like, "Why are you here?" And then how does that then grow into like quality relationships?
Yeah. So the VIP dinner thing is not. So it was before I would say I got very good at inserting myself in places I don't belong to. So that particular conference, it was just like, it's one of very few conferences we have in Warsaw. So I was like, okay, you could buy like a VIP ticket just so the only thing is you get to support the conference. I love to do that kind of stuff. So, and that gives you an access to dinner with speakers. I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds fun. A lot of good people. I might just go there.
So the motivation was to, there's so few events like this, I want to support it.
Yep,
It wasn't like I'm a sneak into the speaker room.
Yes,
and like,
yes. It started like this, you know. That's how, you know, all those addictions start. I would consider this to be so I am a very, I would say that, and I'm not sure if I'm an extrovert or an introvert, because I do have a social battery that rapidly drains, and then I just need to sit alone in the room and just like be all by myself. But I do love some good company. I love good people. I like talking to good people. And so, yeah, I speaking of that dinner, right, I came in, I got to meet all those fantastic speakers, including you. That's how we got to meet each other, right? But moving on, I was like, okay, I always dreamt of being a speaker, a public speaker, right?
Yeah.
Because I felt like, so as like a child, I would say, or like as a teenager, I was playing in like a teenage theater. It was like a, you know, theater club in my high school, right? I was terrible, absolutely terrible at this. And thankfully, there are no recordings of this that seen light of day. So thank you for that. But overall, I always wanted to be a speaker. I was like, okay, how do I do that?
Yeah.
One of the ways is to just be around people who I look up to.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I will just forcefully insert myself into the lives of those people as much as possible. It's like a cheap way to do it. But I was like, okay, I know I could do it. I did like a couple of internal talks before, but then I was like, okay, I'll just go to conferences.
Yeah.
And through the power of vaguely knowing some of the people, I would get to know other people, right? And that just essentially I know, let's say, Elian from BJS,
Yeah.
right?
We should get him on the podcast. Great guy.
He was not here. Yeah, he was
Not yet.
Oh,
Not yet. Yeah.
big mistake. Definitely do that, right? I know Elian, and I was like, okay, let me go to Belgium for like a holiday with my family.
Yeah.
But also I'll just hit a conference on my way. And because I know Elian, he's like, oh yeah, let's go together to like a speakers activity.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. I mean, I was not invited before. I'm not a speaker, but you know, I know you and you know, and that's how it happens, right?
Yeah.
But over time, it's just like I started sort of fiddling myself into, is that a word? Is that something you could
Sure.
say? Fiddling, yeah. Sort of maneuvering myself into the speaking world. I started doing a little bit of public speaking as well, right? But yeah, generally, I just want to be around the people that inspire me, and I do everything that is in my power to. It might sound a little bit selfish, but in general, I don't see it. I go to a conference. Like, okay, I only talk to the cool guys, to the cool people, right?
Yeah.
That's bad. I want to talk to everyone,
Yes.
right? But at the same time, the people that I know that are good people and are good speakers, I want to learn something from them.
Yeah.
So a little bit selfish, right? But it's not necessarily like, teach me. We will just sit together at the table. It's like, here are 5 points how to become a good speaker. No, that's not what I mean. It's just like, just being around people, slowly learning, same as if you were doing that, you know, through the natural course of you doing some kind of a job.
Yeah.
You will just passively learn the things.
Learning by osmosis.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
There's this, people say like, show me the people you spend the most time around and I'll tell you what kind of person you are, you know? And so I think there's value in that. And I love that you pursue it so intentionally. I also know that there's people listening who maybe are like shy. Maybe they're scared to pursue it so intentionally because like I think I did a similar thing unintentionally. So I consider Kent C. Dodds a dear friend. And the reason for that, is because he's a great guy. But the way we met was he had an open source library called Glamorous, where you could do like CSS and JS, and then later deprecated it because there was a better library called Emotion. But I was working at a company at the time where we were dependent on his library, and we needed to migrate. And so there was no migration path, easy one. And so what I did was I created a code mod. At the time, code mods were like crazy. They were new, and so it would as input, take your entire project and convert it from glamorous to emotion, right? One step. And so I made this, and he liked it, and then we met at a conference, and since then the rest is history. And so when you say like I try to be around people who inspire me, that's awesome. I also do, but I guess there may be people listening who are like, I want to meet Kent C. Dodds. I want to meet Misha. I want to meet Isaac. I want to meet Faris. I want to meet Elian. But they're like, I'm shy. I don't know how to move forward. And of course, it's not like write a code mod and then go meet them. Yep. That's not the recipe. So
that's it's a good path as well. Why not?
Yeah, but there's something to be said for the motivation of writing a code mod. You know what I mean? And so I'm curious, how do you get in those rooms without writing a code mod, just because you want to, like without feeling this like I'm too shy because I look up to these people so much?
Yeah. So there are quite a few people I look up to, and then so what I figured out is the majority of people who are like superstars in the community, right, in the JavaScript world, in the AI world, whatever it is, right. Most of those people are just normal people. They crave same things we crave. There are some exceptions of people being like, everyone is beneath me, and we don't talk about those people. But generally speaking, it's like they are just normal people, the same way as you are. And I also, when I'm emceeing like a local meetup, Warsaw.js, and every time, like during the pizza breaks, right, I say, come talk to speakers and everyone else. Like, speakers are normal people. They're here. They want to talk as well, right? So those people, there's a high chance, if you're like looking up to someone, there's a high chance they might be very interested talking to you, or they might want to hear what you say. If you use their product, if you heard them just deliver a talk, even if it's something that you think completely out of your league, just come and say, I enjoyed your talk. That was lovely, right? And that gives your topic to start conversations. And another thing I do is I see a circle again, if it's a person I want to meet, and they are talking to someone else, and I see there's like a circle forming, especially if they follow, the rule of the Pac-Man rule.
Right? Explain the Pac-Man rule for those.
Okay, so the Pac-Man rule is a rule I think everyone should follow while socializing and networking. If you form a circle of people discussing something,
open the mouth of the Pac-Man.
Open the mouth of a Pac-Man. Yes, leave room for one more person to join, and then open up again, right? So that way the circle can grow. We can always invite more people, and that's the way we expand our network.
And is it reasonable advice that if the mouth of Pac-Man doesn't open, then you're just like skip the group, or?
No.
Okay. Yeah, because like I've been in, and I want to unpack some scenarios where I've been in. I've tried to do this, right?
Yep.
And maybe that was a mistake. Was I tried intentionally? But there were people I wanted to get to know that inspired me. And there was a group forming, and I just could never sort of enter the Pac-Man border.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And we can talk more about that, but I'm curious, if you're faced with such a situation, what's the move?
That's something that happened to me. So what I usually do, I don't know if people get annoyed because of this or something, but what I usually do, I come to a closed group, and I start like listening to what they have to say a little bit. If it's like something that's completely has nothing to do with me, I'll leave. Because if it's like something, we're discussing Jason, how he behaved in that event, that does not concern me. That I know I have nothing to do with that discussion. I'll just leave. Okay.
Yeah.
But if it's about I don't know, developer experience of developer tools that I love, I was like, oh yeah. So what I do, I would come up, I would listen a little bit, and I would say, oh, what are we discussing here? And that question is something I always ask. It's not the best question. It's not the best opening statement, but usually people would just fill me. Most of the time, people would fill me in on the context of the discussion, and then I can participate. And then they are like unwillingly open the doors of opening the Pac-Man that it was closed. It opens, and then I enter the circle.
Nice.
That's what I usually do.
That's such a good move. Yeah, I'm happy to. There were 2 occasions where I really struggled with this. One of them was at Web Summit in Qatar. This event is crazy, man. There's like so many, because Qatar also has money, and so they invite wild speakers. I was in a room, in the speaker room at this conference is insane because there's so many speakers, and there was a lot of people that I looked up to. There was like the Veritasium guy, on YouTube.
Yeah.
He was there. And I was like, bro, I was like,
That's crazy.
yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, man, I've seen you from YouTube. So he was there. There was a bunch of people. Hey, I think MKBHD would be there too. Like, it's wild. Okay. Chris Evans is in that room. So it's just bananas. And so I was like, oh my gosh, it's Captain America. It's Captain America. And there was a big circle. And I was this was one of the few times I was very nervous. But I just tried to join the circle, but nobody was interested. And I did the thing where I listened to, but at some point I was like tired of waiting to say like, hey, what are we discussing? And so I just left.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were in this situation now, would it be the same? Would you just like wait there like for forever and then insert yourself somehow? Or
I mean, I couldn't find what was the situation again? Is like you couldn't insert yourself into any of the circles. There were no opportunities or.
Yeah, and I also kind of got the vibe because there were a lot of people waiting to insert themselves into the situation.
I see.
And I kind of got the vibe that it was almost like a little bit competitive. It was like Arc Raiders where you're late stage, and like it's either you're about to extract or you're in one of these red high loot buildings, and like the loot is so valuable. The loot being like meeting MKBHD, that people are trying to like shoot you in the head, socially, and so. I was almost like elbowed out of the way by other people who wanted to meet these people. It wasn't MKBHD who wanted to meet them before me. Okay. And I decided this is not a fight I want to fight. If you want it, you can have it. I'm curious if you're in such a situation, what the move would be.
So I don't think I've been around like the events that are that high. So first of all, I'm generally impressed how yesterday we played I showed you Arc Raiders for the first time, and today you're already making references. That I love that.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, yes, I don't think I've ever been to such high profile events with that amount of traffic, because I do think that after a certain scale, event just becomes overwhelming to me. Like, it's what I like to do is to meet as much people as possible.
Yeah.
And but for it to not to be like too much, right?
Yeah.
It's just the right amount of people. So like GS, I would say like if we're speaking in conference sizes, GS Heroes is the perfect size. It's like up on the upper level of the perfect size.
How many people is that? It's like
600, I think. It was the GS. At least the one that I've been to, like, it was like 1 year before that.
Yeah.
So something like. But things like React Summit is already starting to be a bit too much. So there was, I think, last year or 2 years ago, I was at React Summit. It was like a triple conference of GS. What was it? React Summit, something else. What was it? For like leaders and such.
JS Nation?
So it was JS Nation, React Summit, and the third one. All like 3 in a row in the same venue. Right?
Wow.
So that was a little bit overwhelming, but still I managed to find some good like small circles and stuff like this. But also, again, those superstar people that I look up to, some of them were there. Like John Romero was there.
Oh yeah. Infobip Shift, was this the one? Because he was at...
No. That was at after React Summit at some point in the same venue, right? And John Romero was there, and I've seen people being like so anxious to approach him.
Yeah.
And we had like lunch. There was lunch, so everyone was I was just all by myself, sitting eating lunch, and then there was like a big perimeter around John Romero because people just. Let's approach him, and no one did that. And at the end, I was like eating, and John Romero was like, "Can I sit here? Can I?" And we just ate together, mostly in silence. We didn't talk a lot, but it was kind of funny that that happened. Yeah. And then after that, in the speakers room, Josh Goldberg, hello, was talking about how he got shot once. And then as he was telling the story, John Romero walks in the room, and it was like just on time.
Nice.
It was fun. But yeah,
that's So I met John Romero. For those who don't know, John Romero is the creator of Doom.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. And now, look, I met him a long time ago, and he said he's working on a new game. It's not out yet, I think, but it was very top secret. In any case, he's a great... What helped me with John Romero was I had no idea who he was.
No.
I was just like, cool dude, big long white hair. I was like, whoever this is, it's either a Hell's Angel or it's and so I just said hi, and this actually helps a lot, inserting yourself in these environments where you just don't know the person or their credentials, and you just treat them like regular people, because that's what you said earlier.
Yeah.
It's like, because my wife, for the longest time absolutely, and I still do, idolize Jeremy Keith. I don't know if you know who Jeremy Keith is.
I don't think I know.
He's Adactio on social media, ADACTIO. And he's one of the like early, I'd say, founding fathers of the web. Like when the web was new, he's all over the place. Irish dude, has a consultancy called Clear Left. Just a wonderful person. And if you Google like Jeremy Keith, like author, like credentialed, and we were at a conference together, and we were newly married, like, and my wife was around, and I called her over and I pointed at Jeremy from a distance, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Jeremy Keith. He's the GOAT. I've always wanted to meet him. And she turns to me, she's like, oh, that guy? Yeah, I was talking to him for like so long. And she's like, I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, you won't believe how we met, because like he was around and I just made fun of him. I was like, oh my gosh, why are you here, old man? And he liked it. And so they ended up becoming friends before we became friends.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and then later, like, we ended up having him and his partner over at our home for dinner, and it was like a whole thing. But I think, so what I'm hearing is, and the takeaway for listeners is, don't turn these people into gods, like on which you like sacrifice things on the altar. Yeah, they're just regular people. And they have the same needs and wants as you. And they may be a little bit further ahead in their career, but bro, like at the end of the day, they're just...
Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess it's easier said than done, though. Because I tell you what, man, when I see Veritasium guy or MKBHD, I'm like, whoa, it's MKBHD.
Yeah. But at the same time, I had a similar experience with, Kyle Simpson.
Yeah.
He's a very prominent, one of the author of, what's the book?
You Don't Know JavaScript
You Don't
Yet.
Know JavaScript. This is the book that everyone should read, and everyone read at some point in their career,
it's free.
most likely. And it is free.
And he's a former guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
And we talked about, in that episode, we'll put a link in the show notes, we talked about the benefits of giving away stuff for free.
Yeah, so it's a great episode. Listen to that.
Thanks.
What once happened, I think it was in React Alicante, he had a talk, and at some point in time later, it was my talk, but I was like, there was a whole like fun club. It was like literally a line to talk to him, to say something good to him, to thank him for his book.
Yeah.
It was like so many people. And I was like, okay, I wanted to ask him something as well. So I was like, I approached the line. Then I saw like all the people. So he was on stage talking for quite like a long time. It was a big talk. I think it was like maybe like an opening or closing keynote or something like this, right? And then when it's my turn, I look at him and he's so exhausted. He's been just on stage, and then he's been answering questions. And I said, man, I'll talk to you later. I see you like so tired. And he was like, oh, thank you. And he just left.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be like that. It's so nice that you were sensitive to his...
Yeah.
I think the only circles that I've been in with very high-profile people outside of tech was stand-up comedy.
Okay.
So I used to be a comedian before tech. And
You're still a comedian.
Thanks. I with you. Yeah, you bring out the comedian in me. You asshole. Anyway, we do that. We do that. When you're around, I can't not insult you. That's just
I'm just a bullyable person.
You are extremely bullyable. It's just how it is, but like in an endearing way, like how I don't have a younger brother, but if I did, you would be him, and I just like make fun of you the whole time. Anyway, it's so comedy. Like there were stages where I performed with Gabriel Iglesias, the fluffy guy.
Oh, I love him.
But it's wild to see comics off stage after the show, because they're not funny at all. It's so interesting because like I was, when I was new in comedy, and I did this show with Fluffy, there was a line of fans who wanted to come meet him and take photos and stuff like this. But when it was over, bro was just like, the vibe was so relaxed. There was because he's famous for doing these like car engine sounds and bro, it was just, he was almost like emotionally dead. Because that's just like when we're normal people, you wake up in the morning, you get your coffee, you have your breakfast, you just, do whatever it is you do. You're not like on funny mode all the time. But we think these people are. And so I love that you were sensitive to Kyle, where he's just like, hey man, I've performed for the day. I need some space. And I think that's another sort of tool in the arsenal, is like being sensitive to your whoever it is, and also still recognizing this is a human being, they're probably tired. And I need to give them space. One time I was at a conference, React India. Kent C. Dodds was there. Man, I respect him so much, because what happened was, he was a lot of people like with MKBHD. There's tons of people around Kent, and of course they love him. And I think it's really nice to feel loved like that. But at some point, it was I would expect it was a lot, to the point where he needed to rest. and he was resting, and there were people at the event because it's this event where it's in a hotel. And everyone, attendees, speakers, everyone's staying at the same hotel. And so there was moments where people went to the hotel reception and they were like, hey, I'm just asking for a friend. What room is Kent C. Dodge?
That's crazy.
Yeah, that happened.
Okay.
And so I think the tip that you give here is hey, just be sensitive
Yep.
to is a valuable one. Okay, so you inserted yourself into these places, again, from a pure motivation of one, in the case of Confront.js, I just want to see more events like this in my city.
Yeah.
And two, I like people and I want to be near people that inspire me. And then the rest follows. You've done this. I'm super thankful you've done this and you do this because now we're friends. And you also you're speaking at JS Heroes that's coming up.
Is that confirmed? Because
Sure. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be confirmed. Okay. And you've spoken at many things. You're a great speaker. I've watched you speak.
Thank you.
But is this something you knew when you came to hang out with speakers at this event, or is it more that you wanted to cultivate the skill? So that's kind of a vector to do that.
So it's hard. Like I know I could. Like always knew I could do this for some reason. I don't know why. Even though I'm terrible at like being a theatrical player on stage as I did before. But yeah, I did that before, and it's like, okay, I can do it. I have a just internal feeling I can do it. And crazy. One of the things that I know it's gonna sound really bad, but I went to a lot of conferences, a shitload of conferences.
Yeah.
And one of the things is what gives me the most confidence.
Yeah.
I see people from some big ass companies, massive companies,
like IBM,
maybe like IBM as well. We won't point fingers. Just a big company.
Yeah.
And the speaker is just not very good.
Whoa.
That happens.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like all or some. You can see some people, they might be just the company forced them to do it.
Yeah.
But
so they're just doing a job. They're super checked out.
Yeah. Or some people just, that's their job, and that's just how they do it.
Yeah.
They just do it over a long period of time, and they're just like, yeah, they do it and they have the experience, but they're just not that good. I know it's gonna sound pretty bad for me.
But I guess what I'm hearing you say is not so much that they're not great speakers, it's just that they're not so into it, right? And
yeah, maybe that. Yeah,
and the energy is contagious. And that's actually why this podcast is loved by so many people, is because it's called Contagious Code, and it's really, the goal is take a passionate speaker who's not like burned out because I'm just doing a job, but who actually cares, and then make that level of passion contagious. That's the whole point, right? And so I kind of get what you're saying is like, you've watched some speakers from big companies and you get the vibe that, okay, this is just a person.
Yeah. And they're like bored with what they do, where they're like, that's just their job. They have to do it, right? And there's like, and I look at those people from like high profile companies invited to big conferences, like, I could do better. That's what I think. And I was like, okay, I will just do better. Even though it is hard when you're like nobody in the speaker world, and just starting this is fairly hard in terms of like, there are some conferences that welcome first time speakers, right? But usually most conferences want people who are more experienced. They have some previous speaking experience. They get to like, you have something to show for it, right?
Yeah.
But so there are some conferences, and the competition is, I didn't realize how fierce the competition is in the people like first time speakers submitting CFPs. And like I've seen like people who organize conferences did show me how many CFPs they are. I was like, oh, that's why it's so hard to get in.
CFPs meaning proposals. Like I want to speak.
Oh, of course. Yes. CFP means call for papers. So proposals to speak at the conference, right?
Yeah. Crazy.
So and I realized how much you have to work for it, and how much CFPs you have to fill out throughout the year to get even. I think Daniel told me, Daniel Afonso,
also a guest on the podcast.
Yes, a good friend. So he told us that he did like 90 CFPs per year, with only essentially like very small fraction of them being accepted, and he is already fairly well known in the industry. And he still gets like, he told me it was like 90% rejection.
Wow.
That's what he told me.
Wow. That's wild.
But yeah, again, as you get to a certain level, you get invited. You don't need to submit CFPs. Yeah. But still, some people still have to do it, right?
Yeah. And some people don't want to do it. Like I think the people who, these boring speakers you speak about, I genuinely think they don't even want to submit CFPs. Because they're like, my boss makes me, I'm not saying that as me, I'm saying that as these people, of course. My boss doesn't make me submit CFPs. But okay, so you looked around and you were like, oh wow, the bar is actually quite low. And but then you said the competitiveness for early speakers is, I have to say, the way I got into speaking at tech conferences specifically was so good because I didn't have the same experience where it was so competitive. I had the opposite experience where it was the opposite of competitive in a way, because my first tech conference that I spoke at was JSConf EU, which, you know where we're sitting now in this studio? It's across the river. It used to be like literally you can see it from the studio here. And it's a crazy full circle experience for me because that was the first tech conference I spoke at in 2017. So almost 10 years ago. And I remember standing literally right there and looking across the river to here. And I was like, man, it would be so cool to live here one day. And I was like, what in the world? And so the way I got into that speaking gig was I submitted a proposal, the CFP, the call for papers. And even this term CFP was really irritating because, look, I don't have an academic background, but call for papers. So what, I have to publish a paper, right? And then on the form, there's fields title and abstract. And I was like, this is all way too scientific. I'm just a guy who writes code, man. And so I was scared by this, but I submitted it. And again, this was like 10 years ago. I submitted it and, my wife was then my girlfriend, and I was like, look, there's a chance, maybe let's pray about it. In the end, I got it. But the way I got it was so cool because it was fully anonymous. So every single proposal they received, it was literally all they saw was the title and the abstract. They didn't care about the person. They didn't care about their education. They didn't care about their experience. They were like, this title, we think this would fit with our local community. And we're going to give it a chance. And they did have two stages. They had a main stage with like thousands of people, and they had a side stage with like hundreds of people. And so they did accept my talk. I was on the side stage, to be fair. But I didn't feel entitled to the main stage anyway. I was like a first-time speaker. But that's how I got in, was like there was almost no competition because it was all anonymous. And I think that's such a blessing. It makes it so accessible.
So there is like a little bit of, it's not quite like that in a way, because when you are organizing conferences by yourself, you review hundreds of CFPs and a lot of people, you see people submitting talks and you look at this, there is no name attached to it, but you damn sure know who the person is because you've seen this talk before or you've seen some form of the talk. So a lot of talks from people who've been around, they are not quite that anonymous, even though if they are.
Yeah, but I'm talking about first-time speakers.
First time. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's the point. Like nobody, like now I think people can tell a proposal I write because I have a way, but back then, like, you're like, who is this? Yeah. So that's, I think, so what's the takeaway for listeners? Is it, if you want to, you complete the sentence. If you want to start speaking at a conference or at conferences, like Misha, and get in those rooms, what's the takeaway?
Submit CFPs. That's the first thing you have to do. I have to submit, actually, there's a conference due tomorrow, which I have to submit a CFP for.
Which one is it?
It's Meet.js Summit organized. It's a charity conference in Warsaw, Poland.
Yeah, you were telling me about this.
Yeah. I want to get there. Maybe, I don't know if the organizers will pay for a ticket, but we'll see.
Okay, nice. Good luck with that.
But anyway, so there are quite a few websites you could use for that. So I think I could list, there's confs.tech, I think, one of the websites.
Yeah.
One of the websites which is really cool is cfp.watch.
Oh, cool.
Created by Rowdy, I think his name, I don't remember the last name. It's a person creates a list of different...
A person curates a list of CFPs.
Yeah. And it's much more, it's like, it has everything. It has like the end date. It has what kind of CFP it is. Is it sessionized? Is it Google Forms? It has everything.
CFP.watch?
CFP.watch, yes.
Amazing.
That's one of the things. So just create a couple of proposals. You can read guidelines for what makes a good proposal. Josh Goldberg actually has an article in his blog about this.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes. That's a good.
That we will, yes. And the Just Heroes website also has a nice article about this.
Wow, I didn't even know these exist. But that's really good resources. We'll put links to those in the show notes.
Yep.
So this is how people can get into speaking.
Yeah. Just look at the conferences you want to go to, and even the ones that you don't want to go to that
Yeah.
much, because just getting that initial experience is fairly nice and valuable.
Right. Okay. So you submit proposals.
Yep.
You learn what makes a good proposal
Yep.
by these resources,
Yep.
and then you submit them. But then once you get accepted, it doesn't end with getting accepted, right?
Yep.
Because once you get accepted, then you've got to do a really good job so that they invite you to more conferences.
Yep.
So then once you get accepted, what's the process there? Do you come up with a cool demo? Do you like live code some stuff?
That depends on you. It's all up to you. I guess each, like, someone is very good at live coding, someone isn't, right? Once I watched Eric Rasmussen. He did like I don't remember what it was. It was something with state machines, of course, and React Alicante, right? And he did an incredible live coding demo. I was like, wow, that was so good. And after that, I approached him. I said, like, dude, that was so much fun. And he was like, no, that was all pre-recorded. It was not a live demo.
Whoa.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Sorry, Eric, if you're watching this.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
But yeah, it was so flawless, because usually recording live demos in a way that is, people can't really see that it is really hard, because things can go wrong and then everything falls apart.
Yeah.
But he did it flawlessly. I was like, oh, dude, it's so good, right? And sometimes, for example, I like just live coding stuff as well, because it's fun.
Okay.
So it's different for everyone. Some people just, if you're anxious about live coding, you don't have to have any live coding at all, right?
Yeah. Okay, so it's just prepare well, I guess.
Prepare well, yes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The better you get, the less you need to prepare, I would say, usually. And sometimes people just
wing it.
I know, some people not completely wing it, but it's just you have a certain like framework of things you say.
Yeah.
And the more, like, you see a lot of people doing different, like a lot of people doing different talks and different conferences. But we see those talks are all the same. It's all the same stuff. It's just slightly rearranged and different. The words are different, but it's all the same concept. Some people like established speakers have like a framework, like your talks. A lot of them are like, I've seen a lot of your talks.
What? You think they're unprepared?
No, they're exceptional.
Oh, thanks.
They're exceptional. But I don't think you spend that much time preparing for a lot of them.
Yeah, that's true. I don't. I just make it up as I go.
Yeah. So the more experienced you are, the less you have to prepare, I would say. But still,
you know what this is? This is called economies of scale.
Yep.
Where the more you do something, the cost of production becomes lower over time. And it's just I genuinely I can do it, and it seems like a high cost thing, but it costs me very little because 10 years plus, right? The first talk I did was at a TEDx event when I was like in 2012. That's many years ago. So it's 14 years ago. Wild. Yeah, and so it's at some point it just becomes second nature, and I guess what you need, and the reason I can even have that luxury is because there were so many people willing to give me chances, and I think they were willing to give me chances because I was just good enough, like I was scraping the bottom of the low bar, and they were like, yeah, you know what, it's not a good talk, but we'll give him another chance, and definitely the diversity quota thing.
I was just kidding about saying diversity higher.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm thankful for that because there's like intentional effort going into it, and I think
I love that. I honestly respect the conferences that do think about diversity as well, because what a lot of people think about when hearing the word diversity is like, oh, it's just they want to have more people of color, they want to have more women for the sake of having those people on the lineup. But actually what it is, it's not like by having different people from different groups, races, and or countries of origins, you just create more opinions you could get to hear to. It's like you will hear things you would never even think about before, right? So,
exactly. And the purpose of all of this is to broaden your horizon, right?
Yep,
is to like expand your view.
Yep.
Good. So that's the takeaway is apply to CFPs. And I think if we say it another way, we talked about this with Faris, is honor the organizer, right? Like give them something good, and also honor the audience. And then ideally you get invited to more things. Like this is what happened to me at JSConf EU. Like I did the talk side stage. It was well received. It was so well received that people then and there invited me to JSConf Budapest. And I went to Budapest, and then I went to Armenia, and then this was all 2017 was a crazy year. And then from there, it just kind of piled on. 2018 was crazy, and then 2019 was Finland, where I met David Kepiano. And 6 years later, I ended up officiating his wedding and like marrying him with his wife. And it's just like, it can go very far so long as you honor everybody involved.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the key. It's honor.
Yep.
Let's talk about, you're an engineer, right, by background.
Oh, you could say so, yes.
More of an engineer than a public speaker.
Yes, for sure.
And so you've written a lot of TypeScript. I've actually watched your talks, and you built this really cool watch thing because you have this hackable watch, right?
Yeah. It's actually funny that I forgot it. It's not on me right now.
Yeah, okay,
It's
but
somewhere over there.
But a lot of your work is with engineering. You were previously at Toptal doing engineering, and you've worked in engineering. You didn't finish your degree, right? But you've been working in engineering, and you wanted to do more speaking, and maybe see if you had a path in DevRel or developer relations. What has that been like? Is DevRel, you think, the natural progression for most people? Because like there's benefits to it. I mean, you're more visible with DevRel. DevRel meaning developer relations, conference speaking, all of this. And because you're more visible, maybe your career prospects are better. And a lot of people think going from being an engineer to then being a manager is a step up. It's not, but people think that. We have an episode on the podcast with Jeff Escalante who will tell us it's not a step up, it's a step to the side. Is DevRel maybe considered a step up for those who want to be more visible? Or like, how do you see that transition?
So I can't give that advice because I'm not in a DevRel business, right?
But you want it to be.
So yes, for the long time, I mean, I guess still in a way it is, my long-term dream is to become a DevRel. So
But do you see that as a step up or a step to the side?
For me, it is a step up.
Okay.
For generally speaking, in the framework of hierarchy, I guess, and just career progression, I guess it's just a step to the side. You're not, but it's kind of weird. Like in general, what does step up means? Is it more salary? Is it
Well, up
bigger
is
salary?
how you define up, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? It's all like, do you get more money or you just get to do what you love to do more than what you do now?
Yeah.
That's a step up. In any of the quantities you define, it's just either the money or the pleasure of doing the work. It's for you, right? It is. To me, it would be a step up, of course. Yes.
Because you value that type of work more.
Yeah, exactly. I want to do more of that. For the longest time, I was watching, a bunch of. My long-term dream was to be a part of Chrome the web platform DevRel. It was like, oh, I want to do that. But over time, my priorities shifted because of it's like I need remote work. I value my comfort above many other things. Google doesn't do really remote work unless you are super exceptional, which I know.
When we think of exceptional in this case, Brahmas is the name.
Yes,
Brahmas Van
I was
Dam.
thinking about Brahmas as well. Yeah. So I was like, there's no chance I'm getting on like a web platform DevRel team because I was like looking up. Ooh, Jake Archibald was my idol for the longest time. Still love that person. Anyway, but still, so I was looking up to those people and I was like, I want to do that. And that's why in a part of the way, that's why I started doing some public speaking, but it's not just public speaking. It's more, so I tried, so for a little bit of background, in August last year, not this year, last year, 2024 it is, yes. I broke both of my hands. It was a terrible accident. Crazy. It took me a long time to recover. I lost my job as well. And I didn't work for almost over a year.
You were unemployed for...
Yeah, exactly. I did some part-time consulting on developer experience stuff in several companies, but I didn't really work full-time anywhere. So, and I was thinking like, okay, this is the time where I actually sit down and find a proper DevRel job I always wanted. Yeah. This is the time. But the time could not have been worse because the market is absolutely horrible. It's an absolute ass to find a job, any kind of job, not just DevRel. And DevRel in particular is, I would say, as I see it now, is like only reserved for the most exceptional, prominent people in the area. Like,
wow, that's flattering to me.
Yeah, you're already out there. Yeah. But it's like breaking into DevRel. I know Santosh recently broke into DevRel, I think.
Yadav, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Also guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
We'll put links in the show notes.
Yeah, do that. So he recently, I'm super happy for him. Yeah, that's great, right? But he is exceptional. He's a prominent open source contributor. He's very visible publicly. He does articles. He writes things. He speaks. But also, I don't... I don't have articles. I don't have anything to show for it. I did apply to like a couple of things.
Yeah.
So my previous job title was I was a developer experience engineer internally in a company called Toptal. We had like there's a bunch of stuff mostly around like developer experience of front end pipelines, linters, bundlers, compilers, things like this, right? So I did that, and I did a lot of technical writing, but it was all internally. I have nothing to show for it. It's not public.
yeah.
Some of the things I worked on were open source.
Yeah.
I could show that, but the majority of docs I wrote and the videos I recorded, nothing of it is public.
Crazy.
I was like, okay, I applied to, I don't remember what it was, a railway or some other company. I was like, okay, you have a DevRel posting, and there's literally, when you apply, they say, show us samples of your writing in
And you're like,
public
I
and
can't.
articles. Like, I have nothing. I have
Man,
nothing to show
that's
for it.
rough.
Yeah. And that's one of the other things you have to do as well. You have to be visible. And one of the other things I kind of hate about myself is I don't do social media well enough. Again, I don't do them at all. I'm on like Twitter or something else, and Blue Sky. Love Blue Sky.
Yeah.
Been enjoying Blue Sky lately a lot, and I don't really post anything there.
Yeah.
Because even what you should actually do is when you go to events and conferences, you should do like you take a picture with someone, you tag people, you say, oh, this is a wonderful conference, beautiful talk now on stage, my friend.
You
Or like,
live tweet the whole thing.
yeah, you live tweet, and I think a lot of people do that, and that's great. I when I get tagged in those posts, that's great. I repost them, like retweet them. I was like, yes, that's good. Me myself, I when I'm on event, like social media is like, no, I don't do that at all. It's just I want to be here in the moment. I don't want to take pictures. I just want to be present over there. I don't want to be on social media. And then I come back. I was like, I should have tweeted at least something. I should have did a post. Should have done a post.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what happens.
So that's what it takes to get into DevRel. I mean, is to be
I
very
think
social.
it's a factor. Yeah, you have to be visible online. You don't. I mean, it's nice to have visibility and some kind of audience, because some companies, especially, will like only want you if you have already a piece of audience, some chunk of audience you can influence.
Yeah, but this gets really nefarious in DevRel because I've had companies try to hire me because it's like, oh, hey, if we hire you, then you can shill for us on social media and tell everyone to come and use our thing. But I was like, your thing is not even finished. And I, like a lot of companies, like they're pre-market, they're just raising the first funding round. It's an unfinished beta. And they're like, okay, so if we hire you early, then a bunch of like your followers will come and try this thing that's unfinished, right? And I've had to do this dance many times where it's like, the reason these people follow me is because they trust me. And I'm not going to put some unfinished thing in front of them. And so this is the point of tension. And so I think for anyone trying to get into DevRel, especially depending on the size of the audience that they have, we talked earlier about honoring the conference organizer and the audience. You want to honor your social media followers and friends by not putting nonsense in front of them. This is why, and I'm going to catch some flack for this, but this is why I am not actively like recommending Claudebot or Moltbot or OpenClaw to anyone, because I just haven't seen the light, so to speak. And there's a lot of people who have, and it's probably a wonderful tool. And I would love to actually have an open conversation with Peter, the creator of this, if he wants. But like I just don't. I see it solving like some problems. I think Tulinsky solved a lot of problems with it from syntax, and that's really wonderful. But I just don't have those problems. It's the same with like effect.ts, this library. I just don't have those problems, you know. And Schickling is actually going to be a guest on the podcast, one of the co-authors of Effect. And I tell him openly that I don't have the use case, and he even tells me. And so he's going to come on the podcast, and we're going to talk about, okay, what problem does this actually solve? But I think it's very important. What I'm trying to say is, when you're in DevRel, and I want to get your take on this, do you agree, do you not? When you're in DevRel, one of the most important things is to be genuine and not just say Effect is great because it's the thing to say.
Yep. I actually really enjoyed how you used to, when you were at, what's the name of the previous company you worked at? That was acquired by the IBM. DataStax, right? So you were doing a talk, and somewhere towards the end of the talk, you just said, this is a thing we did at DataStax, the length flow, it was the demo. This is the product I developed, but that's not important. Like, you can use anything else, but this is how you do it in my product.
Yeah.
And then you showed it, and it was like, it didn't feel like an upsell. You genuinely liked the product that you used. You showed it to us, and that's it. It was like, there was no upsell. I enjoyed that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a tight rope to walk, because I actually do. So the big conflict is between Langflow and N8N, and now OpenAI has some type of agent builder, and I genuinely believe Langflow is the best one. And I think if you work in DevRel, this is also maybe a tip for people listening, and I want to get your take on this, is you don't pursue jobs at companies whose products you don't like,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So like I will say this on record. I have used Neon database, and I think it's nice. But I'm scared to use it for production, and I would love Nikita to come on and talk to me about it. Because I've had so much downtime. Like it has been, the availability has not been stable for me for my use case. I actually spoke to their DevRel folks, and I think they were able to help me with it, but it's not there, right? And so I would not go work for Neon at present, or I might as an engineer, right,
Okay.
to help
fix that.
the uptime,
Okay.
right? But in DevRel, this is a hard sell for me, right? I can't just, and so however, if I was to work at a company with like 99.9999999% uptime, gladly, right? And I would do the talks on stage, and I would say, hey, because similar to your dream being on Chrome DevRel, that was also my dream, by the way. I actually almost joined DeepMind to do Gemini DevRel. Anyway, discussion for another time. Okay. But one of my bigger dreams than that, and this is actually my dream today, outside of the podcast, is to do what Steve Jobs did. I don't mean be the CEO of Apple, but I mean the WWDC presentations. Man, like nobody on earth can speak like him. I'm convinced, like the guy unleashed the MacBook Air by pulling it out of this beautiful manila envelope, and it's this thin thing, and he's like, wow, look at this, right? And they just announced the iPhone Air last year, and it was the most soulless presentation of a product. Right? It was people like with the Merkel rhombus saying like, we are so excited and like nobody cares, you're a machine, right? And I think the way Jobs, I think we can all remember the iconic, like, it's an iPod, a phone, an internet communicate from 2007's iPhone launch. I don't see anyone doing that. And my dream is to work with a team that builds incredible products and then present those products, right? And so this is just my long-winded way of saying, if you're trying to get into DevRel and you are knowingly going into a company whose product needs work more than is necessary, and it's an unfinished product, you're going to have a bad time. What do you think about that?
To be honest, that's your perspective from where you stand.
Yeah.
From where I stand, I would happily take any DevRel job. Okay. But to be honest, I would definitely not work somewhere that I particularly like. Is this a service that sells nothing just for the sake of money? And there are some products popular in the developer community that I think are unnecessary, to be honest. And I won't go work there as a DevRel.
Yeah,
but it's a hard time. These are hard times, man.
Yeah. The economy is hard.
It is.
Sure.
Yeah. So what ended up happening to me is I just said, like, okay, I will put this. I still need money as a human being, right?
Of course.
So I was like, okay, I will just be an engineer. I'll continue being the developer experience engineer if I can. So I'll just do that for now. And I'm still quite happy to be an engineer.
Exactly. I think if we think about DevRel and its evolution, DevRel in 2023 and 4 lost a lot of credibility for this exact reason. People were hiring really influencers and calling them developer advocates, but it's just influencers. It's people with like 100K, 200K followers who don't care enough to know the product, who just want to go out and party. Like I spoke with, unfortunately he's dead now, but I spoke with one of the founders of a pretty popular tech company about DevRel. He was interested in hiring me to do DevRel. And he said, I would hire someone to do DevRel, but all they want to do is go out and party on the company's dollar. This is what he said. And I kind of judged him for it, but I also kind of see it. I think this was a mistake. And I think if I can name one company that does DevRel exceptionally well, even for people who aren't full-time developer relations engineers, is Vercel. I think Vercel just crushes it because, and this is, I think Guillermo's coaching, also guest on the podcast, link in the show notes. I think this is his coaching where it's like, look, I want you to be a product engineer. I want you to build a product. I want you to love the features you build. And then when you're exceptionally proud of something, it doesn't matter what it is, even if it's like a cursor on hover, you like make the button highlight differently or something like this. He's like, I want you to record a GIF of this and put it on social media and show everyone, look at this amazing work I did. So he's like, it's beautiful because it's like, I want you to be an engineer, so a developer experience engineer. And I want you to do work that you are so proud of that you then organically take to social media. That's all. right? And to me, this is so much better than DevRel because it's not like you're disconnected from the product lifecycle. Random engineering, not random, but like engineering teams are building features that they don't talk to you about, and then you go tell everyone. Instead, you build things, and then I'm going to train you to like put it in front of people.
That's very good. Yeah, I love it. I think there is like a dedicated DevRel person in Vercel, but there's just like one or two. I think it was one at some point. Or
Lee Rob was the most famous, right? And then he's at Cursor now.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. So, and it felt like the Vercel always felt like they have such a good DevRel team, but it's just one guy.
Yeah.
And other people, the engineers, just doing things.
They have Daniel Rowe, they have Shad Cien, they have even their designer, Evil Rabbit.
Ooh, he's good.
He's got a reputation because he just takes pride in his work. And so, okay, what we're teasing out from here is like the recipe to maybe not find a job in DevRel, but if you are blessed with one, to how to do it well. Or even to find a job in DevRel is just, if you're an engineer today, do work you're proud of and just share it. And you said this is what you're bad at.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exceptionally bad at. Yes.
And so what we're saying is, if you said it's a dream of yours to work in DevRel, so we already got you a protocol, right? Which is you're already doing engineering work. Just share it.
Yeah, I will. I need to share more of the stuff I do.
Can you share it with your work now? Do you have NDAs? like because at Toptal you couldn't because it was all confidential.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, to be honest. It's so I've not started working yet. I did sign a contract and I'm starting like 2 days from now.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I've not worked there just yet, so
I guess so the challenge is for people working in highly secure environments, they probably the road to DevRel from there is maybe do open source work on the side.
Yeah, but it's always like what you do is I'll tell like this. So when I didn't have a job for a long time, I was thinking, okay, I will just do all the side. I have big, massive documents of side projects I wanted to do. I'll just work on all of this. But what ended up happening is I did do some of them, but then later on, it was like the source of inspiration. As I realized, it comes from my day-to-day work that I do, the engineering problems that I solve at work. And that either turns into a side project or like a conference talk or something I could share, right? And that's all of that's just gone. I don't have a job. I am nothing, even though not nothing, but I have nothing to talk about.
Yeah,
there are some things, but I don't need to solve engineering problems in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening? What usually, right?
Yeah, no, it's true.
So what ends up happening is you have a problem at work, even if it's like highly secure NDA top secret project.
Yeah.
If it's like a JavaScript date problem, you can share it online. You don't have to share any like secret sauce. So
you can generalize the solution.
Yeah, you can generalize it. You can post it. You can also like create GitHub issues somewhere else, like on the project that you depend on. Yeah, go and create.
That's really good. I like that. So if you're hidden behind an NDA, you can always just make the problem broader than your company.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think we have like a roadmap to 2 things so far we've teased out. I want to do maybe 3 or 4. The first one was, how do you get into rooms where you maybe feel like you don't belong? We talked about that. And I think we have a good way, even in the crowded like MKBHD environments. Second, we talked about how to get into DevRel. And really, if I can boil this down to one sentence, it's just share your work. Find a way to, 1, honor everybody and do work you take pride in. And then out of that pride, be like, look at this amazing thing I built. Right? And do it regularly on social media. And then ideally companies will be like, hey, we think you can do great work here if you want to share DevRel position, right? I think also this is like Yuna Kravitz was doing this at like DigitalOcean and then Google. Bramus on Chrome. Everybody. Lee Rob was making courses on Next.js before Vercel hired. Daniel Rowe was doing Nux. This is literally everyone prominent in DevRel was doing this. And this is the recipe.
It is indeed.
You talked about how you accidentally became an engineer. So now I'd like the third thing. We talked about how to get into rooms, how to get into DevRel, how to get into engineering. This is the one I want to dial in. You accidentally became an engineer. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I would say I had an affinity for like engineering stuff. When I was at school, we had like these old computers with like DOS and stuff. We would write like basic programs. It was not basic. It was Turbo Pascal. So that's what we were writing, and I was surprised by how hard it is for some people to write code. Like I never wrote code before that, but then for me it was like, okay, that's actually all of it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was like helping other kids to do it.
Yeah.
I felt so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then later on was like, okay, I did that, but then when it was time for me to get into university.
Yeah.
I wanted to become a lawyer. Thankfully, I was like, okay. Lawyer at that time, it was like a hot profession. All the kids wanted to become lawyers, and programming was boring. It's for nerds.
Yeah.
Cool kids are lawyers. It's like, okay, I applied to like lawyers, like law universities all over the country, and because there's like a limited amount of places you could apply to, so you could study for free, and I had one space left reserved, and I was like, okay, just in case, I will go to this university, to the local university, and study math there. Mathematics. It was like applied mathematics and informatics, because just I had a spare slot, and I ended up not getting into any of the law universities. It only got there because the competition was so low. No one wanted to study math. No one wanted to do that.
Whoa.
So I was like, okay, only like it's just because I was like so bad at my exams and everything. I was a very bad student. So I got into
law. Or
for law, yes. For law, everywhere. I was all around the bad student. I was partying at the time. I was like, that was my jam, right?
Crazy. So is the solution then just be bad?
No, be good. So I got into math university. I was expecting to just had some computer science, to be taught some computer science there.
Yeah.
But it was not. It was just pure math. That was the university. So it was like math analysis. There was like all the branches of the most boring math you can imagine. It was fun for me in a way, but it was like a very traditional university in the sense of he had to write a thesis on statistics.
Yeah.
And my professor told me, you're not allowed to use programming to write, to calculate stuff for your statistics thesis. That's how traditional the university was.
Wild.
Yeah, so I had to like calculate it by hand. No. Of course, I didn't do that. I did it in like Excel or something and then rewrote. But
wow,
very stupid.
Is that why you dropped out?
In a way. So what ended up happening, the accidental part is, so university had computer classes where you would a lot of people didn't have computers at home. They had computers at the university. You could just come there for free. They had internet access, and you could do some like homework, basically. Yeah. So me and a couple of my other bad student friends, a group of bad students, we would go there during the classes, and we discovered that most of those computers have Quake installed. So what we did is we went there to skip classes and play Quake. And so we just played some Quake, and on my way out, I saw there was like a posting on the wall. Would you like to work? Call us. And I was like, I just glanced at it, and the lady who's like an administrator, IT support for those kind of classes, she said like, "Are you interested in that?" I was like, "I don't know." And she's like, "It's part-time. You can like both study and work there."
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. What's that? It's like, you will work in like IT support. Are you interested? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, yeah, go to the next room. They'll tell you what to do there. And I walk into the next room. And it's like a full-blown IT support room with like full of computers, like wires dangling everywhere, literally. And there's like a guy, my future boss, then he told me like, sit down. Okay, we'll now begin the interview. I was like, what? What Crazy. Interview? I just came in here to ask what's this job about, and then I had like a job interview. He said, "Yeah, come back, like come tomorrow. You are hired." So,
and this was your first engineering job.
It was borderline engineering job. So I started as IT support, repairing computers, building. Even learned to solder some things, some electronic work. That's what I did. So it was mostly installing, reinstalling Windows at that point, and then just cleaning up installing software. Remote administration of things and things like this, right? And then later on, there was the same sort of unit of IT guys, IT people in the university. They had another department, which was web development department,
right?
And basically, it's 3 people doing websites for all the branches of the entire university. That's like 50 different websites, all look vaguely the same with like different designs, different content, but all of them working on like the same CMS, same website. So there was an opening there because some guy left. A guy left the team, and I said like, oh, can I be? I always wanted to. At that time, I started like studying programming on the side for myself, and I said, can I give this a try? Can I have like a couple of weeks? You want me to? Maybe I can do this.
Yeah.
They said yes, please, and I did give it a try. And they said, okay, you're doing a great job. Now you work there. So I transferred myself to the web development department.
Wow.
And at that time, it was like, it was an ancient CMS that still runs on Java.
Oh.
And it's the version of OpenCMS that was released in 1998.
Oh my gosh.
And it still powers that website
Wow.
because I recently checked. It's kind of funny. So yeah, I was working on this ancient CMS, but I was mostly writing like HTML, CSS. That's what I was doing, right?
In a way, it's like engineering chose you.
I guess, yeah. So that's kind of how that happened. And a lot of things later on, I feel to me happened by chance. Like I found another job because a friend came to visit, like previous coworker. He came back to visit us. He said like, you still work here? By the way, I worked in the university job for 4.5 years.
Oh my goodness.
It was like, so he told me like, why are you still here? You learn nothing. Literally, there's no one to mentor me, no one to teach me literally anything. I didn't know everything I had to do. It was like simple stuff. So I had nowhere to learn, like no
guidance.
Yeah. And he told me like, why are you still here? They pay you nothing.
Yeah.
There are so many other good jobs and you'll learn better. Like you'll learn more stuff over time. And I said like, oh, that's true. I should look for another job. And then after that, I found another job in the same city. It's like a small city in Siberia. So I was like, okay, there's nothing else in this city. No other jobs because it's a very small city. So I moved to a different city where I had my first job. And working at that job, it was like a proper IT company with like processes and stuff like this. And I felt like in 1 year working in that company with like proper mentors, people who actually taught me how to debug code. I didn't know how to debug. I was doing like console log for 4.5 years.
Yeah. I
I was writing console log. And they, oh, there's debugger. Now I know how to use debugger.
Yeah. But do you? Like, I mean, I still use console. I just prefer it.
I have a talk about this. You must watch it.
Okay.
So yes.
We'll link that in the show notes also.
No. It's a pretty bad recording, so don't watch that. I'll probably do that talk soon again. Anyway. So yeah, it was like eye-opening. Like I learned in like even like half a year in that company, I learned more than 4.5 years in the university.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild. And that's okay. So now that's how you became. That's wild to me because a lot like Faris, right? Previous guest on the podcast. Most people that we talked to about this, they just had some inclination for engineering, and then they went into it. But it seems you just had an inclination for Quake.
Yes,
that's so unusual. And you know, hey, it's been great because now you're in top. You previously weren't Toptal. You're starting a new thing soon.
Yep.
So it clearly worked out. But I wonder if there's a repeatable pattern here. I guess not because it was so like serendipitous.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you recently had to find a new job. This time not by accident.
Yep.
Right. The job market sucks.
Oh, absolutely.
And so this time you couldn't just lean on sort of the providence of the universe.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the process? And it sounds like previously you didn't have to look for a job.
Yeah. So all the jobs before that. So somehow I found the job. Either just friends told me like, oh, I work here. You want to work here?
That's crazy.
All the jobs before that happened to me. I never actually had to like actively look for a job, to be honest.
wild.
So pretty much just about everything that happened was.
You sound like such a privileged pig. That's crazy. Guy has just never had to look for a job ever.
I did have to. So when I was trying to leave my small city,
Yeah.
that was where I had to look for a job quite hard. And also I worked for such an abysmally low salary at that point that I even found that job at that company that taught me a lot. It was an abysmally, like, laughably small salary as well.
see.
So, but at that time it was like 2018, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like it. So the job market was on the rise. So essentially there were not enough developers and everyone wanted to have engineers. So you would get hired everywhere.
Yeah.
Literally, oh, you know how to code? Welcome.
I mean, that's how I came to Berlin. That's literally the life I have today was because I was put on that wave to ride.
Yep.
So I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, I wouldn't be here. I maybe wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for that. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, that I rode that wave
Yeah.
of high demand of engineers, and then having nothing to show for myself, I just got okay, yeah, now I work there, I guess. Yeah. So the market has been fairly good. Then when I was working in Toptal, same. I had this like attitude of I don't really want to leave my current company. I was like high up. I was like, yeah. Just what can you offer me?
Yeah.
So at that point in time, it was still possible to do that. Now you have to like beg for it. You have to like just go and collect the scraps of food from the floor, so to say. So yeah, now the job market is very tough.
It must have been humbling for you, huh? Like after Toptal to try and find a new job.
Yeah, in a way, yes. So I was expecting, again, your network is your net worth.
Yeah.
Right? That's what they say. So I through the years, like I had got to know a lot of people. So I was like, I got to ask. And the thing is, now having applied to like hundreds of jobs over this last year, I could say that having referrals is like everything. In a lot of companies, people would not even like respond. Like in companies, I would really love, like I dreamt of working. There's a good example. I was last September. I was at What the Stack. We were both there together. It's a wonderful conference, and I was emceeing a stage where the person from Google was telling about something like Angular and Superbase.
Yeah,
and the person in the audience said, "Oh, I work at Superbase. You want to discuss that?" And they talked, and then I approached the person. I was like, "Hey, listen, I don't have a job at the moment, but I always wanted to work at Superbase. They don't respond to my emails. Can you refer me?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course, I would love to." And he referred me, and I got a response back from Superbase. So they looked at my resume. Otherwise, they would not even no response, nothing, right? And that's how I got a lot of jobs. I got to submit to interview with Neon. I got quite late in the stages of my application in a bunch of other companies that I would have never otherwise even dreamt of getting into, right?
Yeah.
So I would say none of the interviews I had were from the companies I just applied out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Maybe like 2.
Yeah. Wow. That's so your network is your network.
It is now as hard as ever. Yes, it is very nice to have.
It's more who you know than what you know.
I wouldn't say it's more, because first is like getting your foot in the door is who you know. But then later in the interview process is what you know. Of course, that still is very important. The competition is still very high. You have to. There are a lot of companies still doing LeetCode, which is kind of sad in a way.
Yeah.
Like system design, I could get behind. It's kind of fun exercise, but it also, again, I was interviewing for like purely front end positions. And they say, okay, design this highly scalable distributed system. It's like, all right, I guess I know like that's gonna be microservice. I'll draw some letters. That's gonna be like a TRPC between those. That's gonna be the protobuf between those microservices. That is like, okay, yeah. You read the book. There's a website called Hello Interview, and they have like system design when you're in a rush. There's an article preparing to a system design interview in 15 minutes. You can read that. It actually covers quite a lot. I was surprised by that. So.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, it is an excellent website. Okay.
I recently we're talking about finding a job, and I want to get your take on this one thing, because I would give this as advice to someone, and you can tell me if this is valid or not. I think no matter if you're happily employed or unhappy, no matter where you are in your job or your career, interviewing for positions is always good. Always, always, always. Because if you're happily employed, you get to interview anyway and just know what people are looking for. And if you're unhappily employed, well, that's obvious. You can just move. Yep. I'm very happily employed. As you know, I love my job. I got super lucky. I think the work I'm doing at IBM, bro, we have like quantum labs that are so cool. And I somebody come to the lab in Ehingen in Germany. I should take you. It's like unbelievable, right? And so it's Candyland, and I love the job. I still think interviewing is a good practice in general, just to see how the market is. And so at some point, I think this was even before IBM, I interviewed for a position at a company, and I'll name the company because they're a great company. I have nothing against them. 11 Labs, love 11. I use 11 Labs. I really enjoy their products. Great voice agents, great whatever. And I was interviewing with them, and they gave me a LeetCode. They gave me Yeah.
I interviewed for 11 Labs as well because I have a friend who works there. He referred me, and the first step is the automated LeetCode test.
Yeah, exactly. and the crazy thing is, I didn't even apply. Like their recruiter
Yes.
invited me to be considered. And I mean, if you're inviting me, then I assume it's because you know something. Yeah. And so he invited me and then immediately hit me with a coder pad. And I was like, cool. And so it gets better. I opened this and it was the most basic, like write a function that does some data structures, algorithms, whatever. And I was like, look, for me, the purpose of interviewing is to know how well you fit the company, the culture. And so what I did was I just simulated how I would actually solve this problem in real life, which is if you give me today at IBM even some DSA, data structures algorithms problem, I will literally copy and paste your problem into ChatGPT and be like, give me an answer and then test the answer, right? Vibe coding. This is the way. And so this is exactly what I did. I took the problem from CoderPad and I went to ChatGPT and I was like, solve this. And I pasted it and then gave me the code and I copied the code. I pasted it. The recruiter told me this should take about, an hour 15.
Yeah.
Bro, I finished it in 15 minutes. And I pasted it and I submitted and I sent him a screenshot. I was like, done. And he was shocked. He was like, oh my gosh, how'd you do that so fast? I was like, I don't know, man, I just did it. And then they went and reviewed it. And then he wrote me back like a couple days later and he's like, hey, we noticed you pasted some stuff into the coder pad. Do you want to tell me about that? And so I did. I was like, look, man, if the goal of this is to see how I would work daily with the team, this is how I would work. Yep. This is 100% how I work. And before AI, right? Engineering jobs were literally just, I have some problem, I don't know. So I'm going to go get second, third, fourth opinions from Stack Overflow, from whatever, and I'm going to try stuff, and then it's going to work. Medicine is practiced this way. You go see a doctor, and they consult like 18 different specialists, and then they come and implement. This is how it works. We reference stuff all the time. And I think CoderPad interviews are such nonsense because they expect you to just have all this memorized, right? Yep. What do you say to that? Like for someone looking to join a company, especially in this economy, is that a good approach, or is it more like no, memorize your stuff? And
so in a different time, I would say that's not even worth my time. Like I would open it up, I would see like a CoderPad access, I would say goodbye, thank you, goodbye. This is not worth my time. Yeah. But now, frankly, there are a lot of companies still believe that this is what you need to do. And sometimes, yes, if you want to get into, again, FANG type of stuff, like if you want to get into Google, you have to do the LeetCode. You have to specifically study for that interview. If your dream is to work at Google as a software engineer, you have to grind that LeetCode. There's nothing you can do. And still, there are quite a few companies that still have that. And there's nothing you can do. Unless
that's just the system.
Yeah, that's the system. And you can try to game it or
fit it.
Yeah. Like you have to do that now. Before that, yes, I would ask during like the initial recruiter call, will you ask me to do some pointless LeetCode and algorithm?
You would ask it?
Yeah, I would ask the recruiter, like, is that expected that I will do that? Do you expect me to do this on the job as well? Like I could do this on the job, but do you want me to do this in like a condensed amount of time? Live code some kind of algorithm that they don't know. It's like if they say I would say I don't think it's like a fit for me. Wow. I would that's not worth my time. Yeah. At some point I would say that, but now no.
That's wild though, because it doesn't help anyone. There's this idea that when people leave companies, they don't leave companies, but they leave managers. They leave teams.
Yep.
So it's very obvious to me that the main issue is not the work, it's not the data structures, it's not the algorithms, it's the people, it's the culture fit. Yep. So then why do we do LeetCode, man?
Why do what? Sorry, what's the question?
Why do we do this nonsense? Like,
why do we do it? So I believe that originally for like big companies, again, like Google, for example, they get so much applicants, so many people apply to big companies that Google is able to afford all this time of people actually checking your code, taking the time to people to basically what it is
it's filtering.
there's a much less chance. But essentially, if you're willing to work this hard to learn all this somewhat useless shit, I would say, in a way. Of course, you still need some of that, right?
Yeah.
But if you're willing to force yourself to learn all of this just for the interview, then you're perfectly able to just do anything else, right? You'll figure out any framework. Like, doesn't matter if you're a React developer, but you know your shit. You'll figure out Angular. You'll figure out Vue, easy, right? So this is a kind of a very expensive filter that some companies can afford. That if you're able to have the capacity to learn this, you'll figure the rest of the things out.
So it's more just a big power move of like, show me you really want this.
Yes. But it is a very expensive filter because spending time on actual proper interviews is much harder. So you need for other people to spend the time to like, if it's like some sort of take home task that preferably you should be paid for, right? If it takes some amount of time,
Definitely.
then someone has to read through it thoroughly, leave a review, and have a discussion with you. That's I think what the good interview should be, right? And that takes a lot of time and engineering resources.
Yeah.
Otherwise, as learning an algorithm and memorizing everything, and then just using this in a live coding interview, that's much simpler in a way from the perspective of the interviewer.
Yeah,
right.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. It's unfortunate, but it still makes sense that that's the vector. Okay, so we talked. So in this economy, you're saying your network is your net worth. It's more to get your foot in the door. Build your net. I love that because it's a full circle moment. Because we started this by talking about how do you get into these rooms. And so now we have the answer of how you even get a job in this economy is you get into those rooms using the sort of methodology we outlined in the beginning of the episode. You get into those rooms, you talk to those people, maybe you do some social media posting, some DevRel, and all of this ultimately builds a base of a community around you of friends and people who are willing to support you, and then you use that to get a job. Yeah,
absolutely. So if you're watching this right now, just go sign up for a local meetup, and anything that's in your city, just go there and get to know some people.
I guess the other tricky part about this is you have to keep your motivations right? Like if I know there's been times where I was like, I just need to talk to this person because they can help me.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, was that a question to me or?
I mean, no, but it's just more caution because if you're doing that, then I think it can tell people can tell, right? This person just wants to. It has an ulterior motive. They don't care about getting to know me. They just want to use me, I guess, and that can't feel very.
It is. Yeah. I honestly, so for me, it was like I always wanted to get to know people.
Yes.
Any sort of people. Like,
and it comes across.
Yeah. So it's like probably you don't want for it to be like too obvious if you want to just. But at the same time, I have no problem that the guy from Superbase. I just asked him like, "Oh, dude, you're from Superbase. Can you refer me?" I just said it.
I will say I've had a very different experience than you.
Okay.
There were times where I tried to lean on. My I hate using the word network, but just my friends for like, hey, I need a job, I need help, I need this and that. And sometimes people just got really awkward, and they were like, you need something? You need something? I thought you would just have it figured out. And they were just, I would say I felt like they were unwilling to help me. Not out of like I don't like you, but more out of like I don't know how. And I could sense that they had some type of like panic attack. Or they had like anxiety with like, oh my gosh. He's asking me for help, but I don't know if I can help him. To the point where they either said no or they just like totally ghosted me, didn't respond out of like I don't know what to do, like paralysis.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask, like, have you experienced that, or if someone is either in the situation of being asked and they don't know what to do, or if they're in a situation of asking and they don't know how to ask? I guess what's the best way to go around this?
No idea, but I've been on both sides of that, I guess. So I have a problem that I can't really say no to anything. Like again, someone like I will ask people like, do you need help with something, again, in real life and like professional life as well. And I go out of my way to not inconvenience people in the slightest. I absolutely hate asking for like favors and even something, but I don't usually even ask people I don't really know about, like referring me somewhere or something.
What about like the Superbase guy?
It was like, so what happened? I think I asked like, are you guys hiring? And what ended up happening is he offered to refer me. At the end of the day, not the other way around. So I did. I think we connected on Twitter. I sent him a message, and then after some time, he said okay, this is our referral form. Is this the correct information about you?
Nice.
I said yes. Wow, thank you so much, dude. But yeah, I don't. I'm very bad with asking for favors and for referrals and stuff like this.
Yeah.
But people just do that for me, I guess.
Yeah,
sometimes
that's nice.
I don't know.
It's because you're a great guy.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're in German, there's the word sympathisch. You know what this means? It's like, it comes from sympathetic, which just means together.
Yeah.
And there's a resonance, I think. I want to start wrapping up, but there's people who are not as, I'd say, extrovert. And you said, you're a bit of an introvert because you need some time to recover and so on.
Yep.
But I mean, it's pretty clear that you're quite outspoken and outgoing and comfortable talking to people.
Okay.
What about those who aren't? And maybe you have no experience with this because you're not that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But say there's a person who is like, I want to grow my network. I want to go to a meetup after listening to this if you want. But there's like anxiety around this, man. Like it's not for everybody, right? It's a high stimulus environment. There's so many people. Like we were at a meetup a couple days ago at the Zalando, and there was a lot of people, right? And it can be absolutely nerve-wracking. What's the lowest friction first step to this?
Yeah, so I would say again, first thing is I cannot really speak for people with problems like this because for me it's not that hard.
Yeah.
And I know people with extreme social anxiety.
Yeah.
So I could possibly not experience
Relate
that.
to-
I give advice on that. So
You should maybe get one of them on the podcast.
yeah,
It's
of
gonna be
course.
fun. Yeah. It's a good idea.
It's going to be hard. But the thing is, I would, so even in big, let's say, again, a couple of days ago on the Zalando meetup, it's a big venue, a lot of people speaking at once. I hate loud environments.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate that. So what I would do is find a corner that is quiet. And there's not
hide.
Huh?
And hide from people.
No. And you see, so you could either lure some people into the quiet corner, or again, that what ended up happening in your case, some people stayed to speak to you and some other speakers in the venue.
Yeah.
In the venue area, that was it had very little people. In
Yeah.
there. So there was a small circle of people speaking in a quiet environment.
Nice.
And I prefer that to everything else, right?
Yeah.
So because you can just less distracted. I hate the noise and people
Yeah.
around me. So yeah, if you find a quiet corner of people, maybe that's a good place to start for you.
That's really good. I like that. Because also where we were, you're talking about the circle around me, this was the opposite end of where the food was. So
yes,
they were like, hey, everyone, there's pizza. The room emptied, right? Like everyone went to the pizza and then it was 6 of us left. Yeah. Okay. So it's maybe go where the food is not.
Excellent. Yep.
Awesome. Hey, I want to wrap up, but last question. And this is out of people who, because we've covered really a good amount of topics. We've covered how do you get into rooms that you maybe feel like you don't belong in.
Yep.
And this is key to then build your network, which will help you get a job, which is the second topic we covered. And then third is this sort of identity crisis. Hey, I'm an engineer, but I want to get into DevRel, but I'm not sure. And how do you navigate that? If we can summarize all of this in a sentence or a couple words for those listening into actionable next steps. So you said number 1, go to a meetup.
Yep.
If we can summarize that for people listening to finish out the episode, what would you say?
So go meet some people. Yes, sign up for local meetups. Get involved. If you are willing to do extra steps, maybe you can volunteer. That actually is another thing that opens up a lot of doors.
Yes.
So if you're a student and you have, maybe you live with your parents, right?
Yeah.
Volunteer on local events. You get to know people who can talk to other people and build your sort of, again, hate the word network, but you'll get to know some people through volunteering. That's a good place
really
to start
good.
as well.
Yeah.
Right. Volunteer at local events. Then while looking for a job, try to get referrals. Right.
Yeah.
That I think is really important.
Yeah. That's good. Volunteer. I will say this. One thing I can pull out from your story about accidentally becoming an engineer with Quake and so on was you were just open to things.
Yep.
Right? They were like, hey, do you want to work? And you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
That's the key. Yeah, I guess. And you were open to it. You weren't so addicted to your comfort that you were like, actually, I don't want to work. I don't even want to consider this because I'm so comfortable playing Quake. You could have just played Quake your entire life, right? To your own detriment. You could have become one of these like people who rots away in a
No,
basement.
I was interested in getting some money. That was like, oh yeah, I guess I would love some money.
Yeah, yeah, I guess. But I want to tie this to, you said volunteer at local meetup, because volunteering is often free. That's why it's called volunteering.
Yes.
But you and I, like yesterday, right? You didn't have to. But again, I'll say this on record. Like, I so appreciate you coming out to this thing. So my wife is organizing this event, and you showed up, and you're just like stacking chairs and moving tables and just literally volunteering. And we may do some more of it today because you're just like open to things that will fall your way. And I think this really may be the unlock, is like, yes, go to a meetup, but also volunteer with the openness of like, something may happen here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is so, I because I received like a word at the end of last year, which was just go. Like, there's destinations like meetups, there's things you can do which maybe you're scared of, and there's work to be done. But man, just go. And along the way between you and the thing, there's so many unknowns that could become things.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's a great way to summarize that. Yeah. Just go. Just do. Just say yes. To many things, just say yes, and don't expect anything in return, and something will eventually happen.
So good. Hey, with that, listen, I'm so thankful that you said yes to this episode. Indeed, great things have happened. At least for me, like, I've really enjoyed this. I think we have real takeaways for people who want to get in rooms that they maybe feel like they don't belong in, who want to advance their careers, and who even want to maybe get more into public speaking and so on. This has been just a treasure trove of information, and I just want to, on behalf of myself and everyone listening, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining my discussion with Mikhail Korolev. I hope you got out of it as much as I did. Especially, I hope you found ways to get into rooms that maybe you don't feel welcome in, or maybe that you feel like you don't belong in. I also hope that you have a newfound confidence in the job search if you're searching for a job, or a newfound sense of self-worth in the job market based on everything you learned. Thankfully, Misha has a really great job that he enjoys, and I hope you can have that as well. If you'd like to be in touch with Misha, he's at X on social media. His handle is, albeit quite complicated, that there's a link to that in the show notes, but it's MKRL__. He's also on Blue Sky, LinkedIn as well. For now, thank you for being a part of the podcast. Thanks for watching. And most importantly, thank you for your interest in these topics.